Hello and welcome to the First Impressions Podcast. This is the official podcast for the Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams. Please join us for the 36th Annual FIRST Conference this summer in Fukuoka, Japan, June 9th through 14th, 2024. For more information, please visit first.org. And now we join the interview in progress. Good morning, this is Martin McKay, and I am talking with CK Chen, Director of Research for CyCraft. How are you doing today, CK?
Yeah, it's been very nice and very busy days.
And I've also got George Yang, who is the Director of Data Science for CyCraft. How are you doing, George?
It's brilliant, and thank you for having us for this podcast.
Now, CyCraft is one of our diamond sponsors, correct? And one of the people who is the biggest forces behind actually helping this happen.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we're very honored to sponsor all the events like this one. So yeah, it's our honor. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what CyCraft does and why you feel so strongly about giving back to some of the community.
Our CyCraft is a cybersecurity company in Taiwan, and we focus on using AI to solve a lot of different security problems. Yeah, like threat hunting, threat intelligence, and identity analysis. We are starting from Taiwan's community, hacker community. So that's why we support community every time. And especially, I think FIRST is a very nice platform for Taiwan's community to communicate with the world. In the past, we also help a lot of Taiwan's company to join the FIRST. Yeah, I think this will help them to learn more about CSIR, learn more about how to dealing with incident response. Yeah, we also sharing a lot of our research in the FIRST conference.
Now, I
So
mean,
always we want to support FIRST.
I applaud your efforts because trying to get organizations like semiconductors to realize that security and incident response is highly important to them is something we need to get out there.
Yeah, that's correct. Because especially for the Taiwan, the semiconductor industry is super important in Taiwan, and it's one of our core industries to support our economy. So that's why we also help a lot of our semiconductor customer to join FIRST, so they can get the well ahead information regarding to all the cyber threats. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the past, we dealing with a lot of, we may say, the APT attack targeting Taiwan semiconductor vendors.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not going to mention names of people who might be targeting the semiconductor, but we all know that there are a lot of very motivated people that are going to be looking at your industry worldwide and trying to break in. And with, as you said, for Taiwan, this is a much more important industry than it is for some other companies or countries.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's crucial that we have Taiwanese-based development and also the research team to have very deep understanding regarding to the latest attack vectors. So it's also why it also explains why the FIRST is important to us, because you provide a very good platform to share all the important intelligence for all of us. So yeah, so that's why we become the sponsors.
Now let's talk a little bit about AI and the work that you're doing there. First of all, let's define machine learning versus AI versus, because at this point there are really a lot of jumbled terms in many people's minds. So when you say AI, what does that mean to you?
I have to admit that, especially I always told a lot of people that the AI is a marketing term. So personally, in many conferences, I would not use AI. I would use machine learning, because the machine learning is the core technique to deal with all these problems. So, but because we are a commercial company, so of course we have to use the term like AI. Yeah, yeah. So the core value of our company is that we use the machine learning techniques to relieve all the hardworking laboring from the cybersecurity experts, so they can use their precious workforce to working on real important security issues, instead of the daily routine alerts. So all sorts of the bothering things from them. So that's our main targets.
Yeah, you just say, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, so like What we do is that every day, our SOC team or CISO team will receive maybe thousands of events. So one of the mission we use AI is trying to narrow down maybe thousands of event into few of instant, maybe 20 or 30. And we correlation the different event together to order and understand what is the root cause of an attack and the storyline of an attack. That we hope help our instant response to be more efficient and can understand really about what happened. Yeah, and not only dealing with every event.
Yeah, as someone who was a network administrator 20 years ago and had to go through some of those files line by line to find what happened, I understand
Yeah,
why in today's modern technologies we have to use machine learning. We don't have a choice.
Yeah, that's correct.
yeah, that's correct. And for now, this year we have a language model, and we also trying to use a language model to understand the event or the command line. So that can help us to address a lot of similar event or similar command line, and only leave the most important and suspicious event to an analyst. So that can help us to save a lot of human resource.
Yeah, I can give you some numbers. For example, in CyCraft, we got about 300 million events per day. So that's quite a lot of events. So it's just impossible for the security expert to look through all those events. So that's why our in-house machine learning technique will help us to triage all the high severity events. And then, of course, we use different types of machine learning techniques like the one CK mentioned, we use the command line embedding to help us to find the similar command lines and compares to the past events. And of course, we also use our team, both team are using the generative AI to help us to understand different sources from the cyber threat intelligence. So we can unify all the different types of the intelligence into the uniform format, so we can process it and also use the latest technology to process them all. Yeah.
And this is not something that's like once and done. That's a large part of why all of the industry is heading in similar directions to what you're talking about. It's just even deduplicating the events at that level can be incredibly difficult. To also pull in relative information from other sources, that's a great use of LLMs as far as I'm concerned. But it
Yeah,
also
that's totally true because I think there's an example I can share. About 2 weeks ago, it's the first CTI event in Berlin. So I was there, and one of the talk is shared by a speaker. He's mentioned about a problem with the naming issue in the sticks. So, for example, in the industry, someone will type the oil and gas and oil. So for the traditional technology, it's really hard to duplicate all these very similar terms. But so that's why that speaker he utilized the LLM, so trying to process it in a semantic way, so they can process a lot of the duplication automatically, and it will of course save a lot of human power to do the boring job like this one.
Yeah, and we also dealing with a similar problem that we're trying to normalize some text into some structure format. For example, if we have a CTI report, even in the free text, like the vendor's blog or the Twitter post, and we're trying to convert it into a structure format like the sticks. And with the sticks, it has a very standard format and standard type. So that will help us to standardize everything. So to avoid some ambiguous term not being used in the language model.
but then you're also pulling in the external content that is going to be a lot more difficult because it does not have that standard sort of format. You're actually having to use natural language to pull that all together and parse sense out of it before adding it to what your end user, your administrator in the SOC needs to hear.
Yeah, it's actually far beyond just language model because for take the cyber intelligence example, normally you will get a brief description regarding to the certain type of attacks, and then you got a bunch of the reference link with that intelligence. So all the reference can be like the PDF files, the HTML files, and for each HTML file, you got the tables, you got the images, and sometimes in our worst nightmare, it's like someone will screenshot the table into as an image. So you can imagine how they got all sort of different type of the information that need to be processed automatically. So we're not just using an LLM, but we also use the multi-model models. So we can parse different sources of the intelligence into one unified format, and it actually helps us a lot to know dealing with thousands of different CTI together at once. So I think with the advancement of the models, not just the language model, will definitely help us to to be more efficient. And I think CK can also share some of his experience.
Yeah, when we using, I want to mention one thing is about using embedding. Yeah, I think when you use the language model, many people may think about generating the text. But for my opinion, the most important is how we can understand the semantic. So that will come to the embedding. Using the embedding that can help us to represent some part of the semantic. So that's why we use embedding to compare the similarity between different part of a paragraph. That can help us to identify like this paragraph is similar to which kind of a technique described in the MITRE tech framework. So this can give us the other way to formalize some technique and the director and some term are using. So we can use embedding to compare this director name may be very similar. In fact, they are the same one. So in our research, we are widely using the embedding and trying to compare them and use a different way to combine them together and make a different kind of application.
Yeah, I think there's one thing I would like to add on is that last year we presented the command line embedding in the Black Hat USA. So it's a very novel way to process the command line because the biggest problem we used to have is that the command line, they might present in a very different way because the hacker will use different application technique to trying to evade like detection from various of methods. But by utilizing the command line embedding, it can actually help us to cluster all those command line with the semantic. So we're not just now looking at the character or the term itself, but now right now we have a deeper understanding of the semantic of the command line. So by achieving that, we are able to process a lot of different types of command line into one unified cluster, and it actually help us to identify many different new types of attack in this year. Yeah.
I find that very interesting. I mean, working with research teams at multiple companies, I have found that they want to put out everything in a PDF or with the screenshots, like you said. And I can imagine that for a lot of the work, being able to review that when it may be color coded or something else gets super hard at that level. The command line, I think, sounds relatively easy in comparison, but because you're bringing it up, but obviously it's not.
Yeah, it's more complicated than we used to think of because especially for the PowerShell, you got the base 64 encodings and all those different types of rules of the Windows command line. It can literally like escape from different types of rules that written by human. But by our own in-house testing and also apply to the real customer, we're able to capture a lot of mutations of the malicious command line by utilizing the command line embedding. So it's not just it only works in the academic, but it actually works within the real world scenario. So I think that's a real important step for by bringing the latest technology to the real products. Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, because it does bring up the point of what is it like in a test environment, a lab environment, versus what happens when you actually get out there in the real world and you're getting data types that you would not necessarily have expected to begin with.
I think first a lot of time, if we're doing some experiment or some research just in the lab, the data set we collect may be not very good, and sometimes we'll bring some bias and ambiguous to our data set. What we collect in our lab may be very different from the data from real world. Yeah, that will make, in the end, our model will not be effective. Yeah, so that's one problem that we need to dealing with. And the second is about domain knowledge. Yeah, in many time, like our security team, we may not very familiar with data science. And from the viewpoint of data science, they may not have too much domain knowledge. To make these things to be practical, we need to cooperation with our research team who have a security expert and data science who have a data science knowledge. And in when we trying to develop our real product, we cooperate very often. Yeah, so in many cases, we will propose maybe this can be done, and the ML team may try to make a prototype, and we will see the result, and we will give some feedback based on our domain knowledge, and they will continue to modify their approach. So finally, we'll make the something come from lab to the real world.
And also, there's one thing I would like to add on is that, as a data scientist, we appreciate about the value of the data, which is the most difficult part to be obtained for all the other companies. So, for example, even competing with a very large company, they don't have this type of data because all this data you have to, your customer have to sign a contract with you, and you have to sign NDA with them, so you can get the real attack or the recting exercise events from them. So, for example, even the Google, they cannot have the real semiconductor commonized from the industry. So I think that's a very important part, as a strategic point of the CyCraft, because we do have a lot of very important real industrial data from our customers.
And I would like to share one thing more is about Taiwan's culture.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think this is the situation that was only in Taiwan, because in Taiwan we say the traditional Chinese, which is a little different from the simplified Chinese used by China. And when we develop our product, we want our product to say something which follow Taiwan's culture using the traditional Chinese. And this is very difficult because the data set we have is maybe more than 99% is simplified Chinese.
Yeah, I think I can give you a number because according to a lot of papers, one of the most popularly used pre-trained data for all those open source language model, the percentage of the traditional Chinese is 0.13%. So as you can imagine, that's a very minor compared to all the other languages. So, and if we only talk about the Chinese, then number will be like about 1%. So you can see about 99% of the Chinese data is simplified Chinese, and only less than 1% data is the traditional Chinese. But especially for our customer and also for our government agency governments customers, they are very sensitive regarding to all the content you generated. So if you got a simplified Chinese in one of the report that generated from our language model, it will instantly decrease their confidence to our products. So that's why we have a lot of resource to put it to make sure that all our models or our techniques, they will follow Taiwanese tradition and Taiwanese customs to make sure you won't just show any relation with the China. Yeah. So that's very different, especially in Taiwan. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this problem is only happen in the real world. In a lab, maybe we will just say it's normal. But when we want to do a real world, make our user to use our system, this become a real problem we need to address about.
That's not necessarily a type of problem that the average user thinks about, the average security professional thinks about, of having to take in the political and cultural sensitivities when creating a security tool.
Yeah.
Very interesting to hear about that. Well, I've been speaking to CK Chen and to George Yang from CyCraft. I want to thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the First Impressions podcast. I'm your host, Martin McKay, and along with Christian Riley, we interview people who are going to be speaking at upcoming FIRST conferences. We look forward to seeing you at the 36th annual FIRST conference this summer in Fukuoka, Japan. It'll be going on June 9th through 14th. For more information, please visit first.org.